Over the past several decades, tanks have grown faster, more powerful, and far more advanced. But strip away all that modern technology, and every tank in the world still rolls on the same basic system it always has: a closed loop of steel links called a track. That's strange, if you think about it. Wheels are cheaper to build, simpler to maintain, and far less mechanically complicated than tracks. So, why hasn't a single army on Earth made the switch? The answer has almost nothing to do with tradition, and everything to do with physics most people never stop to think about. Here's one detail to start with. A tank track isn't one solid piece. It's built from hundreds of separate steel links bolted together, and if one of them cracks in the field, a crew can often replace it with nothing more than hand tools. That's a useful trick, but it's not the main reason tracks have survived a century of engineering progress. There's a second, far less obvious factor, one that decides not just how a tank moves, but how well it can fight. Let's get into it. Picture a bog thick enough to swallow a properly equipped off-road vehicle up to its doors in seconds. Now picture a 60-ton armored vehicle driving straight into that same mud at full speed. By the laws of physics, it should sink almost instantly. Instead, it plows straight through, throwing up walls of muck, engine barely working any harder than before. So, how does something that heavy stay on top of ground that swallows lighter vehicles whole? The obvious answer, a massive engine just muscling it through, turns out to be wrong. Bolt that same engine onto ordinary wheels, and the vehicle won't go anywhere. It'll dig itself a hole and sit there. The real explanation is a piece of physics most people have never had spelled out for them. On an abandoned military test range, engineers once measured exactly how hard a modern main battle tank presses down on soft ground while it's moving. The results surprised even people who work with heavy vehicles for a living. The tank exerted roughly 0.9 kilograms of pressure per square centimeter of ground. For comparison, an adult walking along a muddy trail puts down close to 2 kilograms per square centimeter every time their full weight lands on one foot. In other words, a multi-ton war machine presses on soft ground with about half the force of an ordinary person walking. Think about deep snow. Step into it wearing ordinary boots, and you'll sink to your waist almost instantly. Strap on a pair of wide snowshoes, though, and suddenly you're gliding across the same snowdrift with ease. A tank track is essentially the same trick, scaled up and built out of hardened steel. So why not just solve the problem with bigger tires? Strap enormous wheels onto an armored vehicle, and the flotation problem should disappear, right? Except geometry gets in the way. No matter how large a wheel gets, it only ever touches the ground at one small patch directly beneath the axle. Every bit of the vehicle's weight funnels down through that single point, and soft ground simply turns to soup underneath it. A track works on a completely different principle. Instead of concentrating weight into a point, it spreads the entire load across a footprint several meters long. In effect, the tank lays down its own portable road as it moves, one steel plate at a time, and then rolls its wheels over that road instead of over the raw ground beneath it. In August 1915, a Russian engineer named Nikolai Lebedenko built something unlike anything else in military history: a combat vehicle with wheels as tall as a 3-story building. Its first test run in the forest ended in a way nobody involved had expected. The trial took place on a heavily guarded test site deep in the woods. Soldiers ringed the clearing while engines roared somewhere among the trees. And then, snapping century-old timber like twigs, one of the strangest machines ever built rolled into view. It carried 2 enormous spoked wheels, each 9 meters across, with an armored gun turret slung between them. Behind it dragged a long steel tail, ending in a small support wheel barely 1.5 meters tall, powered by 2 massive engines salvaged from a captured airship. For the first few seconds, it looked unstoppable. The giant front wheels snapped a thick birch trunk as though it were a twig, and the machine rolled dozens of meters across open ground while its creators watched in triumph. Then, without warning, everything stopped. In the middle of flat, level terrain, the vehicle lurched violently and froze. The problem wasn't the massive front wheels at all. It was the small wheel at the back. It had rolled onto a patch of soft earth and sunk straight into it. The engines kept roaring, spinning the giant front wheels harder and harder, throwing up fountains of dirt, but the machine didn't move an inch. Picture a shopping cart with one tiny caster wheel jammed into a crack in the floor tile. Push as hard as you like, and it simply won't roll. That's exactly what trapped Lebedenko's giant. But his team had miscalculated how the vehicle's weight would be distributed, and far too much of it ended up resting on that small rear wheel, which buried itself the moment it touched soft ground. You'll still find claims online that spies or saboteurs wrecked the project. The surviving records tell a much less dramatic story. What killed the machine was simple geometry, not espionage. Military funding was pulled, and the giant was left to rust in the forest for 8 years before it was finally broken down for scrap. The lesson engineers took from the wreck was blunt. No wheel, however massive, can beat soft ground. On a real battlefield, a simple trench can be just as deadly to a wheel as any swamp. Picture a heavily defended line, the ground cut through with wide trenches. A wheeled armored car races toward one at full speed, the driver hoping to power straight across the gap. Physics doesn't cooperate. The front wheels drop into empty space, the nose slams into the far wall of the trench, and the wheels spin uselessly in midair, throwing dirt but finding nothing to grip. In seconds, a multi-ton vehicle has turned itself into a stationary target. This kind of failure was a common sight for military observers in the early 20th century. The best wheeled vehicles of the era couldn't clear a gap much wider than a single meter. Colonel Ernest Swinton studied these failures closely and came away convinced the Army needed an entirely different kind of vehicle, something heavy enough for real combat that could cross a wide gap without ever losing momentum. The math wasn't on the wheel's side. A wheel can only bridge a gap up to roughly its own radius before it drops in, which meant clearing a 3-meter wide trench would require a wheel the height of a 5-story building, and engineers had already tried and abandoned exactly that idea. Swinton's answer was deceptively simple. Replace the wheel's circle with a closed loop of steel. Imagine wading through deep mud while carrying a wide plank. You set it down ahead of you, cross it, then lift it, move it forward, and repeat, building yourself an endless portable bridge, one step at a time. A tracked vehicle does exactly that automatically, dozens of times a second. The chain of steel links is that same bridge, laid down continuously in front of the hull, with the tank's road wheels simply rolling along the inside of the loop like train cars on a rail. As long as the track's footprint is longer than the trench is wide, there's no gap for it to fall into. It just spans the ditch and lets the hull drive straight over. Some engineers of the era tried a different fix. Fold out hydraulic legs meant to let an armored car step over a trench like a mechanical spider. In practice, those systems were far too delicate. A single piece of shrapnel or a clump of mud jammed the mechanism and turned an expensive vehicle into dead weight. The continuous track, by contrast, just worked. Mobility is only half the job, though. A tank also has to fight, and firing a heavy gun creates a physics problem all its own. The instant a 105mm cannon fires, a column of flame erupts from the barrel, and the shell leaves at several times the speed of sound. Newton's third law doesn't care how impressive that looks. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction, and the barrel slams backward with a recoil force measured in dozens of tons. On a tracked vehicle, that force disappears into the hull as barely a shudder. Put the same gun on a wheeled chassis, and firing it becomes genuinely risky. A wheeled vehicle only touches the ground through a handful of small tire contact patches, and when the gun fires, those tires compress under the sudden load, and the whole vehicle rocks violently, losing its footing for a moment. It's a bit like trying to fire a heavy rifle while standing on a mattress. The recoil throws you off balance, and a fast, accurate second shot becomes nearly impossible. A tracked tank, by comparison, sits during firing like a steel building bolted to a concrete slab. Its wide tracks spread the recoil energy across a large area of ground almost instantly. The hull settles back down within a fraction of a second, and the gunner can fire again without having to re-aim from scratch. This isn't just theory. Italian engineers once built a wheeled tank destroyer called the Centauro, armed with a 105mm gun, and during early testing, they traversed the turret 90 degrees and fired to the side. The recoil was so violent that the wheels on the opposite side actually lifted off the ground, and the vehicle came close to tipping over in front of its own design team. Fixing the problem meant adding a slotted muzzle brake to vent propellant gas backward and cut the recoil force, plus a system that automatically locked the suspension before every shot. Both fixes worked, but they also made the vehicle more complex and more fragile. A tracked tank never needed any of that. Its stability comes built in, simply from the way it sits on the ground. Surviving your own recoil is only half the battle. The enemy usually shoots back, and that's where wheeled vehicles run into their most serious weakness. When a shell explodes nearby, it sends thousands of red-hot fragments tearing through the air in every direction. If one of those fragments hits a wheeled vehicle's tire, the multi-layer rubber bursts almost instantly, air hisses out, and the vehicle lists to one side and slows or stops entirely. Hit a tank's steel track with the exact same fragment, and the result is a scratch and a ping as the shrapnel bounces off. The tank barely notices and keeps rolling. It's the difference between popping a balloon with a pin and trying to do the same thing to a suit of chainmail. Some people point to tires with automatic pressure regulation systems as a fix, but that technology really only helps with small punctures. Under sustained fire or a nearby blast, the rubber's structure is destroyed outright. Pressure drops to zero in an instant, and no onboard compressor can keep up. The vehicle is stranded. Even swapping out a damaged wheel is its own ordeal. A single wheel can weigh over 200 kilograms, and lifting the vehicle to remove it typically requires dedicated recovery equipment with a crane. A damaged track sounds just as serious at first. A bad enough hit can blow a track apart, leaving it lying on the ground like a snapped bicycle chain. But for the crew, that's rarely a vehicle-killing problem. Tank crews carry everything they need to fix it on the spot: a sledgehammer, a connecting pin, and a spare track link. 3 crew members can knock out the damaged link, pull the track back together, fit the replacement, and have the tank moving again in around 40 minutes. No workshop required. Shredded rubber, by contrast, can't be hammered back into shape. It has to be replaced entirely. When it comes to surviving sustained combat damage, tracks aren't just better than tires, they're playing an entirely different game. Steel tracks proved almost bulletproof in every sense, but they weren't perfect. On paved roads, tanks moved slowly and wore their tracks down fast. So engineers tried something ambitious: a tank that could shed its tracks entirely and drive on wheels alone for the road portion of a journey. Picture a heavy tank thundering down a highway at nearly 70 kilometers an hour, keeping pace with ordinary road traffic. Look closer at its running gear, and there are no tracks in sight. The hull rides on large road wheels fitted with narrow rubber tires, just like a wheeled vehicle. This was the invention of an engineer named Walter Christie, and his convertible wheel and track tank looked, on paper, like the best of both worlds. Drive to the front quickly on wheels to save wear on the tracks, then fit the tracks back on before pushing into rough terrain. The Soviet Union adopted the idea and built an entire family of fast tanks around it, famous for parade demonstrations where they'd race down roads on wheels and clear 40-meter jumps, landing cleanly. Reality on the battlefield turned out to be far less forgiving. Think of a fine mechanical watch, flawless on a shelf in a clean room, but hopeless the moment it's dropped in mud or struck with a hammer. Christie's dual system had exactly that problem. Hidden inside the hull was a maze of extra shafts and chains needed to drive power to the wheels, and the driver had to physically remove the tracks, stow them, and fit a steering wheel to switch modes. All of that hardware clogged with mud, bent on rough ground, and failed at the worst possible moments. A single broken part in the drivetrain could leave the whole vehicle stranded. The idea met its final test in 1939 during the fighting along the Khalkhin-Gol River, where the terrain was loose sand rather than pavement. The wheels bogged down almost immediately, so the tanks fought the entire campaign on tracks alone, hauling their unused wheel hardware along as dead weight. After that, the hybrid concept was quietly retired for good. The lesson stuck. A combat vehicle can't afford to trade reliability for speed. That's still the guiding principle behind tank design today. Modern main battle tanks weighing close to 70 tons cross swamps and soft ground that would swallow almost anything else on wheels, and in more than a century of trying, no wheeled design has ever managed to replace the track. A tank was never meant to be a race car. It's meant to be a fortress that keeps moving in places where every other vehicle gets left behind, and that steel loop wrapped around each wheel is still the clearest sign of exactly why.